Hello and welcome to day one of the centenary edition of the International 6 Days of Enduro. After heavy overnight rain, which we haven't seen all week leading up to the event, conditions will have changed for our first special test, which is where the first riders are heading now, led off by the World Trophy Team Enduro 1 riders.
Of the 613 riders competing this week, it was the Enduro 1 guys who were first up to pick their bikes out of Parc Fermé, led by Jeremy Jolly of France, Glenn Kearney of Australia and Simone Albergoni, the first of the home Italian riders, to pick his bike out of Parc Fermé and just check it over, give it the once over before they took to the stage for the initial depart. Lots of pressure on these riders. Just before 8 a.m. they pick their bikes up to head out for the first day's stage, making sure they've got all their credentials and all the checks in place to get through scrutineering and out onto the course.
Thomas Olbia!
The crowd lined the avenue as they headed away from the port area, and then head over to the first of our tests of the day. As Enduro 1 riders then followed up by the E2 guys. A very, very tight class that we're expecting this week. And then it'll be the E3 guys, a lot of them on those great 300cc two-strokes heading out. Last off were the women, and it is those that we are going to pick up with first of all as we head out onto track with the Swedish girls who are looking to upset the favourite Australians and the French winners from last year. So let's take a look at the stages that they're going to be doing today. We've got 6 special tests for them. The Pizzolongo test we'll see twice, the first and the 5th test, and also the Golfo de Ranchi test will be seen twice as well. And it was the women who were up first for that, and it was the Australians who hit the ground running, quite literally. Jessica Gardner representing her country along with Taylor Jones and Gemma Wilson, and it was Jessica Gardner and Taylor Jones who would share the victories for the day apiece between them, taking home all the special stage victories. Gemma Wilson was the slowest of the 3 Australian riders, but nonetheless it was enough to put them ahead of their nearest rivals. Those were the Swedish girls. They've come revitalised this year. Jessica Johnson was the best of those. She was followed by Emily Carlson and Sanna Bergman. Remember, for the women, it's 3 riders per team, but only 2 scores count, and the Swedish were just hot on the heels of the Australian riders. 3rd place on day 1 went to the French, but they did not have a good day. Audrey Rossat was the 2nd fastest French rider behind Geraldine Fournel, but they lost Juliette Perez. She damaged her knee midway through the day, and that dropped her out, so the French down to only 2 scoring riders now. But let's listen to one of our fast Australians from the day.
It wasn't too bad of a day. It got a bit hot towards the afternoon, and I think between Taylor Jones and myself, I'm pretty sure we won all the specials between us two, and our other Australian, Gemma Wilson, is going really good as well, mixing it up with all the girls. So it was a great day and a good start to day 1 of the 6 days.
Confirmation of the results in the Women's World Trophy then. Australia lead from Sweden, France, Italy and Canada, and none of the women's teams incurring any penalties so far. On to the Junior World Trophy, and it's going to be probably the most hotly contested classes. We've got some very strong junior teams, none more so than the defending champions, France. Loic Larieux was the best of the French riders on day 1, just edging out his teammate Matthias Bellino, who led early on, but in the second half suffered in the dust for his lower starting order, and you can see visibility not great for any of the riders, but Bellino suffering more than others. Kevin Roma was the 3rd Frenchman home and helped his team to a good finishing position first at the end of the first day. Ruda Moroni for Italy was in fact the 2nd home, Giacomo Redondi was the fastest of the Italian riders in the E1 class. Nicola Mori just came home 9th position overall in the juniors, and that helped Italy into 2nd place. Big moment there for number 38, Nicola Mori, but he kept it all together and pushed through the dust to work well for the Italian team. For the Americans, Andrew DeLong had a decent first day. Perhaps didn't show some of the speed that he was hoping for, but the Americans have certainly started better than they did 12 months ago. Caleb Russell, the best of the Americans, finding his form halfway through the day and picking his speed up to come home as the fastest junior of the day, just 1.75 seconds ahead of Loic Larieux of France. And that helped move the Americans up into 3rd place at the end the first day.
Yeah, everything was going good. We have a strong team. My teammate was riding not so bad. And me, I was leading in junior before the last lap and outright, and with a lot of dust, you know, we had a lot of riders in front of us, and the last lap I lost a lot of time. And but the most important is we are still leading in junior for the team.
Confirmation of the junior results as well then, and the gap between France and Italy just a little bit over 2 seconds. USA in 3rd, Great Britain not out of it, and Australia just a minute behind them. On to the big boys and the World Trophy, and as the dust sprays across the Sardinian landscape, they ate through the early morning rain and just picked it up. Antoine Millot would come home as the fastest KTM rider and the fastest Frenchman of the day. He's riding the 300cc 2-stroke in the E3 class this weekend for the first time. He's borrowed Christophe Nambertin's bike and is certainly adapting to it well, though he says that perhaps it'll take him a little bit longer to get up to speed. Or if he does get up to speed, then he could dominate this already leading the E3 class. Johnny Aubert, 2nd Frenchman home and doing very well. A small crash, but nothing too bad for the Frenchman. He was pretty happy with his day 1 pace. Pierre-Alexandre René was the 3rd of the French riders home. The Husaberg rider having a very solid day, riding within himself and saying, I rode like normal. Roderick Thane in 24th position was the last classified French rider and therefore not taken with his score. But that shows that a 24th position as their last rider, the French are just as strong as ever, even without Christophe Nambertin, who was replaced at last minutes by Fabien Planet. The USA were in 2nd position come the end of the day, and the 3rd USA rider home, Michael Brown, was riding well, coming home 49 seconds back of the fastest man of the day. Kurt Caselli was just behind him and not quite getting to grips with the sandy soil and dust quite as quickly as he would have hoped. Thad Duval was the main guy who didn't get counted in the World Trophy team for the United States, not quite feeling his form on the bike at all during the day. GNCC champion Charlie Mullins had a decent ride. He brought it back and came home in 9th position overall, 40 seconds behind the fastest man of the day. That was this man, the Australian Daniel Milner. He really put the pedal to the metal in the first 2 stages, taking 2 wins on the trot and set himself up to hold on to it right until the end, coming home 1 second ahead of Alex Salvini. Chris Hollis had a good solid ride, and that was the order of the day for the Australian team. They've had a lot of incidents last year, and they just want to make sure that they keep healthy and keep strong throughout the first couple of days. Josh Green, new to the team, rode well, didn't get too tense, and made sure that he brought his bike home. Matthew Phillips, the newly crowned junior world champion, went over the handlebars midway through the day, cracked his helmet open, but just about got back to the pits, and his score wasn't counted. He wasn't the only man who had an injury. Alex Salvini, the newly crowned E2 world champion for Italy, picked up a thorn in his arm halfway through the day, and it got infected, and that meant that he's spending a bit of time in hospital overnight trying to get his arm back. into good shape because he couldn't even pull in the clutch lever. That didn't stop him from coming home second overall. He pulled the Italian team right up by their bootstraps as the others all put in good performances, but it was that time from Alex Salvini that really showed. Thomas Alderati did not quite have the pace that he wanted early on, but he will be back again for day 2, along with Denny Philipparts, who came home well in E3, third overall in his class, and a better start than he had 1 year ago. Even Cervantes was the best Spaniard home. He came home in 5th, 27 seconds back off the best rider. Back on a KTM for this year, his 350 has been working well for him, and he seems a lot more comfortable saying that he's happier in these sorts of conditions because it's where he and the rest of the Spanish team are used to riding this sort of dusty, dry and rocky conditions. Cristobal Guerrero only made it to the middle of day 2 last year. He got through day 1 pretty fast, coming home in 13th position. Let's hope it's not too unlucky for him and he can make it through tomorrow unscathed. Lorenzo Santolino, good ride for him, just pulling up the rear of the Spanish team. But it was about the Australians versus the French, and it was Daniel Milner who takes first blood.
Yeah, not too bad. I started off real well through the morning and kind of went a little downhill from there. Once the track got rougher, I struggled a little bit more, but the boys caught back up to me after the first few tests that I won. But yeah, you know, the track kept getting rougher and rougher, so as the day went on, it was getting harder, so it's definitely going to be a lot harder tomorrow as well.
If the wind keeps blowing, then the dust will be harder indeed, but France go into that with a 1 minute 15 gap over the USA, with Australia in third.
Sardinian wind has whipped up quite a storm, but as the dust clouds start to settle and the last club riders file in, some riders are off to lick their wounds and perhaps reassess their strategies before an early start on day 2 of the 2013 FIM International 6 Days of Enduro.